2014 in the morning, my 6-year-old was standing beside my bed, shaking so hard her teeth were clicking. "Mommy," Lily whispered, and her voice was so thin I almost didn't recognize it. The man downstairs asked if Daddy was asleep. For 1 second, I couldn't breathe. I sat up so fast I tangled myself in the blanket and Lily climbed into my lap like she was trying to disappear inside me. Her little hands were ice cold. Her pajamas smelled like the dusty hallway outside the basement door. Daniel groaned beside me and pulled a pillow over his face. "Claire, please," he muttered. "Not again." I turned on the lamp. Lily's eyes were huge, wet, terrified. "What man?" I asked. "The one who talks through the vent," she said. He said not to scream this time. Daniel sat up then, annoyed more than alarmed. He rubbed his face and looked at me like I was the problem already. "She had a nightmare." "No," I said too fast. "Look at her." He did look at her, but not the way I was looking at her, not like a parent seeing fear, more like a tired husband seeing inconvenience. "Lily," he said with that patient voice he used when he wanted to end a conversation, "there is no man downstairs." Lily burst into tears. And that was the moment I knew I was done pretending the house was just making noises. We had moved into Daniel's late father's farmhouse 3 months earlier, and I had hated it from the second I saw it. Not because it was ugly. It wasn't. The place had wide porches, old oak trees, white shutters, and the kind of charm people love in photos, but the inside felt wrong. The hallways were too narrow. The vents carried voices. The basement door never shut cleanly. At night, the floorboards popped in patterns that sounded less like settling and more like footsteps. Daniel called it grief. Then he called it stress. Then, when I kept bringing it up, he called it overreacting. I had almost started believing him, which was the worst part. A year earlier, I had lost a baby at 14 weeks. After that, everything inside me felt bruised. I still cooked dinner. I still packed Lily's lunch. I still smiled when people asked if I was okay. But there was a crack in me that never fully closed. Loud sounds made me jump. Silence made me more nervous. And Daniel, who used to hold me when I cried, slowly turned into the kind of man who looked embarrassed by my sadness. So when I said I hated the house, he didn't hear fear. He heard weakness. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I stopped trusting myself. The first time I heard someone in the basement, it was late afternoon. Lily was coloring at the kitchen table. I was making grilled cheese. And underneath the normal sounds of home the pan sizzling, crayons rolling, the hum of the fridge, I heard a heavy scrape like a chair dragging across concrete. I froze. Lily looked up. "Did you hear that?" I remember the way my stomach dropped, because children don't ask that unless they heard it too. Daniel came home 20 minutes later and I told him. He didn't even go downstairs. He kissed Lily on the head, loosened his tie and said, "Old houses make noise." The second time I smelled cigarette smoke in the upstairs bathroom. Daniel didn't smoke. I didn't smoke. Nobody who had visited us smoked. But the smell was sharp and stale, like someone had been standing in the room with the door shut, exhaling into the towel rack. I checked the window, locked. I checked the trash, empty. I told Daniel, and he laughed once under his breath like he couldn't help himself. "Claire," he said, "you're letting this place get into your head." I wish I could say I pushed harder. I wish I could say I trusted my own fear right away. But when someone you love keeps treating your instincts like a defect, you start editing yourself. You start softening what you know. You say maybe instead of definitely. You say, "I might be wrong." You say, "I'm sorry for bringing it up again." That is how doubt enters a marriage. Quietly, repeatedly, until it sounds like your own voice. And then everything changed. A week after the cigarette smell, I found the chain on the back door unlatched. That chain was always locked. Always. Lily couldn't reach it, and I had started checking it every night before bed because the yard backed into a strip of woods. When I found it hanging loose at 7 in the morning, I stood there staring at it so long my coffee went cold in my hand. Daniel was eating toast at the counter. Did you open this? I asked. He barely glanced up. No. The chain was off. So lock it. I heard my own voice sharpen. Daniel, can you please stop acting like this is nothing? He sighed and set the toast down. Because it is nothing. You probably forgot. I did not forget. Claire, you've forgotten other things. That hit exactly where he knew it would. Since the miscarriage, I sometimes lost little things. My keys, a grocery item, the name of a movie. Grief and exhaustion had made my mind soft in places. He knew I hated that. I didn't forget, I said again, but weaker. He stood, kissed my forehead like I was a child and said, "You're overreacting." Lily was sitting on the stairs, listening. That should have shamed him. It didn't. By then, little things had started piling up. A can of soup missing from the pantry, mud on the laundry room floor when no one had come through that door. The sound of water running upstairs after I was sure I'd turned every faucet off. Once, I found Lily's red sweater folded neatly on the basement steps. I had washed it the day before and left it on her bed. When I asked Lily if she took it downstairs, she shook her head. Then she said very quietly, "Maybe the basement man was cold." What I saw next shocked me. She had drawn him. Not a monster. Not a made-up thing with claws and teeth. A man. Brown jacket, dark beard, sad eyes. Standing beside the vent in her room. And above his head, in her careful first-grade handwriting, she had written, "He asked if my mom is nice." I took that drawing straight to Daniel. He glanced at it and actually smiled. Kids imagine things. She's not imagining specific questions. Because she hears you, he snapped, more sharply than usual. You keep acting scared, so now she's acting scared. I stared at him. So, this is my fault? He looked away first. That's not what I said, but it was exactly what he meant. For the rest of that day, I moved through the house like someone walking across thin ice. Every sound felt loaded. Every quiet corner felt occupied. I started leaving lights on in rooms I wasn't using. I checked closets. I checked windows. I told myself I was doing it for Lily, but the truth was uglier than that. I was terrified of being right. And I still didn't know how right I was. The only person who noticed something was wrong was Evelyn Ross from next door. She was in her late 60s, silver hair always tied in a low bun, sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had lived in the small blue house beside ours for 20 years and treated everyone with the same dry honesty. She caught me at the mailbox that afternoon, one hand trembling around a stack of bills. "You look pale," she said. "I'm fine. That's a lie." I almost laughed because I hadn't heard a clean truth spoken out loud in days. I looked at her and to my embarrassment, my eyes burned instantly. Evelyn softened just enough. "What's going on? I should have lied. I barely knew her, but something in me was tired of being dismissed. So I told her the edited version, the noises, the smell, the unlocked door, Lily talking about a man in the vent. And when I was done, I waited for the same look Daniel always gave me. Evelyn didn't give it. She asked one question, "Do you feel safe?" And because no one else had asked me that, the answer came out before I could stop it. "No." She nodded slowly. "Then stop waiting for someone else to approve your fear." That sentence stayed with me. But I still didn't know what was coming next. That night, I checked Lily's room before bed and found her vent cover unscrewed on one side. I stared at it for a long time. The screw was sitting on the floor beneath her dresser. I picked it up with numb fingers. Daniel came into the room carrying a basket of clean towels, saw me kneeling there, and immediately looked irritated. "Seriously?" I held up the screw. "This was loose. So tighten it." "Daniel." He set the basket down hard. "What do you want me to say? That a phantom is crawling through air ducts? I want you to stop talking to me like I'm insane." His jaw tightened. "Nobody said insane. You don't have to say it." For a moment we just stood there breathing at each other. Then Lily called from the bathroom asking for help with toothpaste and the fight broke apart without ending. That was how most of our fights ended then. Not resolved, just interrupted. Left to rot quietly. Later, after Daniel fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and listening. At 1:08 a.m., I heard it. 3 slow knocks. Not at the front door, not outside, inside the wall behind our bed. I sat up so fast my neck hurt. The knocking stopped. Then came a low scrape, then silence. I shook Daniel awake. "Do you hear that?" He opened one eye. "Claire, enough. There is someone in this house." "There is not. How can you know that if you won't even check?" He threw the blanket back and marched out, furious now. I followed him down the hallway, my heart smashing against my ribs. He turned on lights, opened doors, checked the mudroom, checked the pantry, and yanked the basement door open. Darkness stared back. "Happy," he said. He flipped on the basement light and took 3 loud steps down. "Nobody here." I wanted to believe that. I really did. Then I saw the bottom step. A fresh, wet footprint. Daniel saw it too. I know he did because his eyes flicked to it and away so quickly it almost looked like nothing. But instead of bending down, instead of calling my name, instead of saying maybe I was right, he reached for the light switch and shut the door. "It's your imagination," he said. That was the first time I felt real anger instead of fear. The next morning, I waited until he left for work. Then I opened the basement door by myself. The air down there was colder than the rest of the house, damp and metallic. Old shelves lined the walls, paint cans, rusted tools, boxes from Daniel's father that we still hadn't unpacked. The single bulb over the stairs buzzed weakly. I went down 1 step at a time, phone in one hand, a fireplace poker in the other. I found the footprint immediately. Then another one. Not mud, water. They led across the concrete floor and ended near the back wall where Daniel's father had once installed storage cabinets. I moved closer and saw that one cabinet wasn't flush. It stood half an inch forward, like it had been dragged and shoved back too fast. My mouth went dry. I grabbed the handle and pulled. Nothing happened. It was blocked from behind. I stumbled backward so hard I hit the washing machine. The sound echoed through the basement, and for one awful second I heard movement behind the cabinet. Not a rat. Not pipes. A person shifting weight. I ran upstairs, slammed the basement door, and locked it. Then I called Daniel. He answered on the 3rd ring. "I'm in a meeting. There's someone behind the cabinet in the basement." Silence. Then, "Claire. I heard movement. You open the cabinet. It's blocked." Another silence, longer this time. And right there before he said another word, I understood something terrible. He wasn't confused. He wasn't surprised. He already knew. When he got home that evening, he didn't look scared. He looked cornered. I was waiting in the kitchen. Willie was at Evelyn's because I had suddenly decided I needed one adult in my life who listened when I said something mattered. Daniel loosened his tie and avoided my eyes. "You had no business going down there." I laughed once. It came out broken. "That's your opening line?" He dropped his keys on the counter. "You scared Lily. Evelyn said you were shaking when you brought her over." "Stop doing that." "Doing what?" "Making my reaction the problem instead of the thing causing it." His face hardened. "You want the truth? Fine. My brother is downstairs." The room went completely still. Daniel's younger brother Dean had been a shadow over our marriage from the beginning. He was the name spoken carefully at holidays. The one family members lowered their voices around. I had met him twice in 10 years, once at our wedding where he came late and drunk, once at Daniel's mother's funeral where he vanished before the service ended. The official story was always the same. Dean had made bad choices. Nobody ever said exactly what that meant. I stared at my husband. "Your brother is living in our basement? Temporarily." "Temporarily?" He needed help. "So you hid him under our daughter's bedroom?" Daniel rubbed his forehead like I was exhausting him. He was supposed to stay in the storm shelter. He wasn't supposed to come upstairs. I felt something icy move through me. So Lily was telling the truth. He didn't answer. I stepped back from him. How long? A week. A week. My voice cracked. You let me think I was losing my mind for a week? I was trying to handle it. You were gaslighting me. Claire, don't use words like, don't tell me what words to use. My whole body was shaking now. You looked me in the face while I begged you to believe me. He had nowhere else to go. What about us? Where were we supposed to go if your brother decided to do more than whisper to our child through a vent? Daniel's eyes flashed. Dean is not dangerous. That was when I understood that Daniel wasn't hearing me at all. He had built a whole story in his head where he was the good man helping family, and nothing I said was going to matter if it threatened that picture. But the truth was about to get uglier. Why is he hiding? I asked. He violated parole. I went cold. Parole? It was a technical violation. Technical like what? He looked away. He missed a hearing. He panicked. I stared at him, and the lie was so obvious it was almost insulting. No, I said. Try again. He clenched his jaw. He got into a fight. With who? It doesn't matter. It matters to me if that man is living in my house. Daniel slammed his palm on the counter. He is my brother, and Lily is your daughter. The sound of that sentence hung between us like shattered glass. Then, softer, more dangerous, I said, if you make me choose between your brother and my child, you will lose every single time. For the first time that night, he looked uncertain. But that wasn't the end of it. He took me downstairs. I didn't want to go. Every instinct I had screamed not to. But I went anyway, because fear gets mean when it's kept in the dark, and I needed to see what Daniel had chosen over us. He slid the cabinet aside, revealing a narrow opening to a crawl space I never knew existed. A cot had been pushed against one wall. There were blankets, bottled water, empty soup cans, a lantern, and a bucket. My eyes landed on a brown jacket hanging from a nail, the same brown jacket Lily had drawn. Dean sat on the cot, elbows on his knees, looking at the floor. He looked thinner than I remembered. Dirt ground into his fingernails. Beard overgrown. Eyes restless and red-rimmed. When he looked up at me, he gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. Sorry, he said. Didn't mean to scare the kid. I actually took a step back. Don't call her that, I said. His smile faded. Right. Daniel stood beside me like this was a tense family dinner, not a nightmare. Dean just needs a few days. Dean laughed under his breath. A few days. Sure. I looked at Daniel. What does that mean? It means I'm figuring it out. Dean leaned back against the wall. You should have told her. Not helping, Daniel muttered. Dean's eyes moved back to me. For what it's worth, I told him this was a bad idea. I believed that, which scared me more. When we went back upstairs, I locked myself in the bathroom and threw up. I wanted to call the police right then. I should have. But Daniel pounded on the door and said the words men like him always say when they want women to carry the moral weight of their bad decisions. If you call, you ruin this family. I opened the door so hard it hit the wall. No, I said. You already did. He lowered his voice. Lily will hear. Good. Maybe she should hear that her father thinks a fugitive in the basement is normal. Daniel's face changed then, and I saw the part of him I had been trying not to see for months. Not loving. Not patient. Not concerned. Controlling. You are spiraling, he said quietly, and if you call the police in this state, they're going to see that. There it was. The weapon he always kept hidden under his tongue. My grief. My therapy. My worst year. I stared at him, and for one awful second, shame flared hotter than anger. He saw it happen too. That was the part that made me sick. He knew exactly where to press. Then he said, just sleep on it. Sleep on it. Sleep on it. As if a strange man had not been sleeping under my daughter for a week, as if I had not been made into the crazy one inside my own home, as if everything in my life hadn't just tilted. I didn't know how much worse it could get. I found out the next afternoon. I was packing a bag for Lily, not because I had a full plan, but because instinct had finally stopped asking permission. I told Daniel I was taking her to my sister's for a couple of days. He didn't say no, he just said, "Don't be dramatic." While I was in our bedroom, I opened the bottom drawer of his desk looking for our insurance card. Instead, I found a manila folder. Inside were printed emails between Daniel and someone named Mark Feldman, a family attorney I'd never heard of. On top was a draft petition for temporary custody. My name was in bold across the first page. I couldn't breathe. The petition described me as emotionally unstable, prone to panic episodes, increasingly paranoid, and a potential danger to the child due to delusional claims involving imagined intruders. Attached were copies of my therapy attendance records, notes about the miscarriage, a list of medications I had taken for anxiety after the loss. My legs nearly gave out. This wasn't about Dean needing a place to hide. This was insurance. Daniel had prepared to make sure that if I spoke, no one would believe me. What I saw next hurt more than I can explain. At the bottom of the stack was a note in Daniel's handwriting. "If Claire escalates again, file Monday." Again. Like my fear was a tantrum, like my voice was an administrative problem, like I was not his wife but a situation to manage, I heard the front door open downstairs and shoved the papers back into the folder with shaking hands. Then I took photos of every page. My fingers were so unsteady I nearly dropped my phone twice. When Daniel came into the room, I was sitting on the bed, Lily's overnight bag zipped shut beside me. "You packed a lot," he said. I looked at him and saw a stranger wearing my husband's face. "How long have you been planning to take Lily from me?" He stopped. That tiny pause told me more than anything else. "Claire." I found the folder. His shoulders dropped, and instead of looking ashamed, he looked annoyed that he'd been discovered. It was a precaution. A precaution. I stood up. "Against what?" "Me noticing the truth? You have been escalating for weeks. There was a man in our basement, and I was handling it. By preparing to tell a court I was delusional?" He took a step closer. "You don't understand how bad this could get." I laughed in disbelief. "No, Daniel, you don't." I wanted to scream. I wanted to break every framed family photo in the house. I wanted to drag that folder into the street and light it on fire. Instead, I did the thing women do when the room stops feeling safe. I got quiet. That quiet saved me. Because Daniel mistook it for surrender. He said more gently now, "Claire, just don't do anything rash. Dean will be gone soon. We will fix this." We. I almost hated that word more than anything. After he left the room, I texted Evelyn 3 words. "I need help." Her reply came back in under 10 seconds. "Come now." I told Daniel I was taking Lily for ice cream. He said fine without looking up from his laptop. That told me he still thought I was contained. At Evelyn's kitchen table, I showed her the photos. She read them slowly, lips pressing tighter with every page. When she finished, she took off her glasses and looked right at me. "You need to leave tonight," she said. "I know. Not tomorrow, not after another argument. Tonight." My throat tightened. "If I call the police now, Daniel will spin it. Then don't call from that house." I stared at her. Evelyn leaned in. "Listen to me. Men like your husband depend on timing. They depend on you looking emotional while they look calm. So stop giving him home field advantage." I almost cried again, just from being believed so cleanly. She reached across the table and covered my hand. "You are not crazy. You are late to your own rescue, that's all." I didn't know what was coming next. When we went back to my house, Daniel's truck was in the driveway, but he wasn't inside. Lily ran upstairs to grab her stuffed rabbit. I started packing clothes fast: jeans, school uniforms, medicine, birth certificates, the folder of papers I'd pulled from his desk while he was gone. Then I heard voices below me. Male voices. Daniel and Dean. I moved to the top of the stairs and listened. I told you to stay down there, Daniel hissed. I needed air. You were in Lily's room. A pause. Then Dean said, she saw me. My blood turned to ice. Did you touch her? Daniel asked. No. Another pause. Longer. She was crying, Dean said. I was trying to calm her down. I gripped the banister so hard my nails bent back. Daniel's voice dropped lower. You stay away from my daughter. Dean laughed once, bitter and ugly. Funny. Suddenly you remember she's your daughter. That line hit the air like a slap. And then everything changed again. I leaned one step lower, just enough to see them in the foyer. Daniel had his back to me. Dean looked worse than the night before, sweating, twitchy, angry in a way that felt unstable. His brown jacket hung open and I could see the tattoo curling up his neck. In one hand, he held Lily's stuffed rabbit. My stomach flipped. Why do you have that? Daniel asked. Dean glanced at the toy and tossed it onto the table. She dropped it. Stop going near her. You're acting like I'm the problem. You are the problem. Dean stepped closer. No, Daniel, I'm the evidence. Silence. My skin prickled. What does that mean? Daniel said. Dean's smile was thin and wrong. It means if I go down, I talk. Daniel's whole body tensed. Shut up. Dean leaned in. You think harboring me is your only issue? Tell your wife why I really came here? I stopped breathing. Daniel looked up the stairs then, like he felt me there, and I slipped back before he could see me. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might shake the walls. A minute later, Daniel came upstairs. His face was pale, but he forced a calm voice. Change of plans, he said. Dean's leaving tonight. That should have relieved me. It didn't. Why? I asked. Because this has gone far enough. I looked at him. What did he mean downstairs? Daniel didn't blink. Nothing. Lie. Tell me the truth. He moved closer. I am telling you the truth. Another lie. That night I waited until he showered, then I searched his laptop. I found a local news article from 8 months earlier. The headline mentioned Dean by name. Violation of protective order. Woman threatened. Outstanding warrant. Not a bar fight. Not a missed hearing. A woman. I read the article twice, then a third time. Dean had shown up drunk at his ex-girlfriend's house after midnight, pounded on the door, and threatened to kill her new boyfriend. A neighbor called police. Dean fled before officers arrived. Daniel had known exactly what kind of danger he brought into our home, and that still wasn't the bigger twist. In Daniel's email archive, under a folder labeled taxes, I found messages between him and Dean from weeks before we moved into the farmhouse. One line made my chest go numb. If Claire starts hearing things again, that actually helps us. Just stay out of sight? Again. There was history here I didn't know. I clicked deeper and found older messages. 2 years of them. Money transfers. Excuses. Anger. And finally, one exchange that blew the rest open. Dean, Dad found out about the account. Daniel, then keep your mouth shut about whose signature that was. I stared at the screen, then another. Dean, you got the house because I lied for you. Don't act noble now. My hands were freezing on the keyboard. Daniel hadn't just hidden his brother. He and Dean had been bound together by something dirtier, money, fraud, maybe both. The farmhouse. Daniel's late father. The inheritance. Suddenly, every rush decision made sense. Why Daniel pushed us to move there, why he couldn't let police into the house, why he needed me discredited before I spoke. It was never just about protecting Dean. It was about protecting himself. But I was still missing one piece. I got it just after midnight. I woke to whispering outside Lily's room. Not inside the vent this time. In the hallway. I slipped out of bed and saw light under her door. My whole body went electric. I moved silently across the floor and heard Dean's voice, low and shaky. I'm not gonna hurt you. I just need the bunny, okay? Lily whimpered. I shoved the door open. Dean was crouched beside her bed, one hand extended. Lily was pressed against the wall, eyes wild with terror. Daniel was behind Dean, breathless like he'd just followed him upstairs. "What the hell are you doing?" I screamed. Dean flinched and stood too fast. Daniel grabbed his arm. "He's leaving," Daniel snapped. "Go back to our room." "No." I lunged past them and pulled Lily into my arms. She was crying so hard she couldn't speak. Dean looked at me with a strange mix of shame and resentment. "She took my chain," he muttered. "What chain?" I shouted. Daniel pulled him backward. "Enough." Lily buried her face in my neck and gasped out. "He said he knows where my baby brother is." The room went silent. My son. The baby I lost. Dean's eyes flicked to Daniel. That was the moment the last lie broke. I looked at my husband. "Why would he say that?" Daniel didn't answer. "Why would he say that?" Dean gave a dry little laugh. "All nerves and poison. Because Danny talks when he drinks." I felt the floor disappear under me. "What did you tell him?" I whispered. Daniel looked horrified now, not at what Dean had done, but at what might come out next. "Claire, don't." Dean smiled without warmth. He told me about the crash. I'd been in a car accident 3 days before I miscarried. A truck ran a red light and hit the passenger side. The doctors never said for sure that the crash caused the loss, but I had carried the question like a wound ever since. "What crash?" I asked, though I knew exactly what he meant. Dean's eyes stayed on Daniel. "Tell her." Daniel's face drained white, and then the truth behind the truth finally came out. Dean had been driving that truck. He had borrowed a company vehicle from Daniel's firm after a night of drinking. He ran the light. He panicked. Daniel made calls. The report got softened. Insurance handled quietly. No charges beyond a traffic citation. And Daniel never told me because by the time we lost the baby, he was already too deep in the lie. I couldn't speak. The hallway blurred. Every night I have cried in Daniel's arms after that loss. Every time he told me sometimes awful things just happen. Every time he kissed my forehead while hiding what he knew. Every memory curdled all at once. Lily was clinging to me, shaking. I held her tighter and stared at the man I had built my life around. "You knew," I said. Daniel opened his mouth. "You knew." "Claire, I was trying to protect you." I made a sound I had never made before. Not a sob, not a scream. Something rawer. "Protect me," I said. "You let me grieve beside the man who helped cover it up." Dean yanked his arm free and backed away. "This is why I said don't involve the wife." Daniel rounded on him. "Shut up." Lily started crying harder. I carried her into our bedroom and slammed the door. Daniel hit the wood once from the other side. "Claire, open the door." "No, please." I stared at the lock with tears running down my face and understood with a terrible kind of clarity that there was no part of this marriage left to save, not one. For 10 minutes, nobody moved. Then I heard a crash downstairs. Then shouting. Then Daniel yelling Dean's name. I didn't wait to find out why. I grabbed my phone, Lily, and the car keys I had hidden in my robe pocket. We ran. But that wasn't the end. We made it halfway down the stairs before Dean appeared in the foyer, wild-eyed and sweating, a kitchen knife in his hand. I stopped so hard, Lily slammed into my legs. "Don't," Dean said. His voice was shaking worse than mine. "Nobody call anybody." Daniel came from the kitchen, hands raised. Dean put it down. Dean ignored him. His eyes stayed on me. "You were gonna call." "Yes," I said, "I am." He took one step forward. "Then I'm dead." I pulled Lily behind me. "Stay back." Daniel looked at me then, panic finally cracking through his control. "Claire, don't provoke him." I almost laughed. "Even now. Even then." "Provoke him?" I said. "Your brother's holding a knife in front of our child." Dean's hand twitched. I said, "I'm not gonna hurt the kid." Lily was sobbing into my back. Daniel spoke carefully, like someone trying to calm a bomb. Dean, listen to me. Let them go outside. We'll figure this out. No, I said. Both men looked at me. I pulled my phone up where Dean could see it. I'm calling the police. Daniel's voice snapped. Claire. There it was again. That same furious disbelief that I would dare act like my fear mattered. Don't do this, he said. You're overreacting. Overreacting. With a knife pointed at my daughter. With the truth of my lost baby bleeding through the walls. With months of lies choking the air out of the house. Something in me went completely still. I looked right at him and said, no. I'm finally reacting the exact right amount. Then I hit call. What happened next felt like every second had edges. Dean lunged. Daniel grabbed his arm. The knife flashed. Lily screamed. I shoved her toward the front door and heard glass shatter somewhere behind me. Dean and Daniel crashed into the entry table, sending framed photos across the floor. My wedding picture split down the middle under Dean's boot. I yanked the door open and pushed Lily onto the porch. Run to Evelyn's. She took off barefoot into the dark. Dean tore free from Daniel and bolted after her. I don't remember deciding to chase him, I just did. The yard was wet from earlier rain. My feet slipped in the grass. Dean caught Lily near the side gate and grabbed the back of her pajama shirt. She screamed for me, and that sound will live inside me forever. Let her go, I yelled. Evelyn's porch light snapped on. Then another light. Then another. Neighbors waking. Doors opening. Voices. Dean dragged Lily toward the shed at the edge of the yard, the knife still in his hand. Daniel stumbled after us, blood running from a cut above his eye. Dean, stop, Dean whirled. She called them. You said she wouldn't. The whole yard went silent. You said she wouldn't. Daniel stopped dead. I stopped too. In one sentence, Dean had exposed the last rotten thing underneath all of it. Daniel had not just hidden him. He had promised I would stay quiet. Promised I would doubt myself long enough for him to stay safe. What I heard next made everything final. Siren. Far away at first, then closer. Dean heard it too. His face changed. Panic twisted into desperation. He pulled Lily against him and back toward the shed. If I go, he said, I talk about all of it. Daniel stood frozen. I stepped forward instead. Dean, I said, and my voice surprised even me. It was steady. Look at her. He blinked. That's a little girl, I said. Whatever you've done, don't make this the thing that finishes you. His grip on Lily faltered for one tiny second. I kept going. You want Daniel to save you again? Look where it got you. He didn't save you, he buried you. Daniel made a strangled sound. Claire, stop. No. I didn't look at him. This ends tonight. The sirens were loud now. Red and blue washed across the trees. Dean's breathing got ragged. Lily was crying so hard she could barely stand. Evelyn appeared at the property line in a robe, phone in hand, shouting that officers were coming through the front. Dean, I said again, softer now. Give me my daughter. For one terrible second, I thought he might run. Then the shed light flicked on behind him, the police spotlight hit the yard, and the illusion shattered. He let go of Lily and dropped the knife into the grass. I ran. I grabbed Lily and pulled her so tight against me she squeaked. Officers were everywhere then, yelling commands, rushing past us, forcing Dean to the ground. Another officer caught Daniel by the porch and shoved him against the railing when he tried to move toward us. Lily buried her face in my shoulder and sobbed, Mommy, 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 Mommy. I kept saying, I know, I know, I know. But that wasn't the real climax. The real climax came 3 minutes later, under flashing lights, when one of the officers asked the question Daniel had spent months controlling. Ma'am, do you feel safe with your husband? Daniel looked at me then. Not angry anymore. Not even defensive. Just stunned. Like he truly had not believed this moment would come. blood on his temple. Shirt torn, face blank with the realization that his voice no longer outranked mine. "Claire," he said, "please." I looked at him and the grief in me shifted shape. Not gone. Never gone, but no longer kneeling. "No," I told the officer. "I do not feel safe with him." Daniel flinched like I had slapped him. Then I handed the officer my phone. The photos of the custody papers, the emails, the article. Everything. The officer scrolled in silence, then called another detective over. Daniel started saying my name again, but nobody was listening to him anymore. Another officer was already reading him his rights for harboring a fugitive and interfering with an active warrant. He kept looking at me like I could still stop it. That was the part that almost made me laugh. After everything, he still thought I might save him. I didn't. They took Dean first. Then they took Daniel. And when the police car doors shut, the whole night seemed to exhale. The next few weeks were ugly in the uncinematic way. Real life is ugly. Statements at attorneys. Lily waking up crying. My sister driving down with casseroles and legal pads. A child therapist with kind eyes and a basket of puppets. I moved into a short-term rental across town, then later into a small townhouse with a yellow door Lily picked because she said it looked happy. Daniel called from jail twice. I didn't answer. Then his lawyer called. Then his mother's cousin. Then a pastor from his family church. Everybody wanted nuance. Everybody wanted compassion. Everybody wanted me to remember that families are complicated. I had spent years being asked to understand men who never once tried that hard to understand my fear. I was finished. Dean took a plea deal. To my surprise, he talked a lot about the warrant, about the hidden money, about Daniel manipulating records tied to his father's estate, about the old crash, about all the quiet deals brothers make when one values image more than truth. Daniel lost his job before the case ever reached court. I filed for divorce the same week, but the healing part didn't happen all at once. That would be a prettier story, but it wouldn't be true. For a while, I still apologized too fast. I still checked locks 3 times. I still woke up at small noises and sat in bed holding my breath. Lily wouldn't sleep unless the hallway light was on. For 2 months, she called every closed vent in every room the bad hole. I let her. We named fears in my house now. We did not bury them. Evelyn came over every Sunday with coffee cake and blunt advice. "Stop saying sorry when you mean thank you," she told me once as I apologized for crying at my own kitchen table. So I tried. "Thank you for believing me. Thank you for staying with Lily while I met the lawyer. Thank you for calling the police the second you heard her scream." One afternoon, months later, Lily and I were planting marigolds in little clay pots outside our townhouse. Dirt was under her nails and all over her knees. She looked up and asked, "Mommy, how did you know the man was real when Daddy said he wasn't?" Children ask the question under the question. What she meant was, how do I know when to trust myself? I set down my trowel and said, because my body kept telling me something was wrong. She thought about that. "Like a tummy ache? Sometimes," I said. "Sometimes like a tight chest. Or a bad feeling. Or a thought that won't go away." She pressed a marigold into the soil very carefully. "What if someone says it's nothing?" I swallowed hard. "Then you listen to yourself again," I said. "And you tell someone safe." She nodded like that made perfect sense. Maybe it did. That was the miracle I didn't expect. Not that life became perfect. Not that pain disappeared. But that truth, once spoken all the way out loud, made room for air again. I got stronger in quiet ways. I changed my passwords. I opened my own bank account. I finished the community college classes I had paused after the miscarriage and started working part-time at the library. I stopped shrinking when people interrupted me. I stopped calling fear dramatic. I stopped asking for permission to act like my safety mattered. Daniel wrote me one letter before the divorce was finalized. In it, he said he had made mistakes, as if lies were paperwork errors, as if betrayal were an accounting issue. As if telling a grieving woman she was imagining danger while real danger slept beneath her child was something a marriage counselor could smooth over with breathing exercises. I tore the letter in half and threw it away, because some endings do not need elegance, they need truth, and the truth was simple. The most dangerous part of that house was never the hidden room. It was the man who watched me lose confidence in my own mind and decided that was useful. The man who called me unstable when I was observant. The man who said I was overreacting because admitting I was right would have cost him too much. People like to think betrayal is loud, that it announces itself, that you will know it the second it enters your life. But sometimes betrayal looks like a hand on your shoulder and a calm voice saying, "You're imagining things." Sometimes it looks like love speaking with the vocabulary of doubt. Sometimes it wears a wedding ring. If there's anything worth carrying out of my story, it is this: fear is not weakness, instinct is not hysteria, and being dismissed does not mean you are wrong. The night the police arrived, they did not rescue a helpless woman from a bad house. They arrived just in time to witness the moment I stopped abandoning myself. That was the real ending. Not the sirens, not the handcuffs, not the divorce papers. The real ending was the second I looked at the man who had trained me to doubt my own eyes and finally said, without shaking, without apologizing, without asking to be believed, "No, I know what I saw,